Hello, BookTube. I know it might sound simplistic, but in my life, I have found it to be true that if you are thinking about some subject and you really genuinely don't know what you think about it from time to time, it really helps to make a list of pros and cons. A literal list of pros and cons. I have found that can be an immensely clarifying thing. And it occurred to me that that is true for BookTube as well. Quite a few of you who are watching these BookTube videos by me and any of my band of merry misfits, my fellow booktubers, a lot of you may be wondering, should I try that? There's this whole ecosystem out there. I watch a lot of these people, but a lot of them say from time to time, you should try this. You should do it yourself. Should I? Should I try that? I would argue that for you in such a situation, it might really help to make a pro and con list. It might also help people who already make BookTube videos and aren't 100% sure what they think about it, whether or not it's the right thing. No matter how invested you are, you may be thinking, I'm doing this now, but should I keep doing it? So I wanted to go over BookTube pros and cons. I think this list is fairly comprehensive. I'd be kind of surprised if there were a major pro or a major con that I do not come up with for this list. I tried to take a 30,000-foot view of the subject. So we'll start with the cons and we'll tote them up. Although I want to stress, I'll stress now and I'll stress at the end, that a pro and con list never boils down to simply which list is longer, right? Because some pros and some cons will have more weight than others. It's not a question of numbering them. Although the numbering can help as well, because obviously if you're making a pro and con list of some decision that you have to make, and the con list is 20 items long and there are only 3 things on the pro list, either that means that the thing is obviously a bad idea once you itemize it, or that unbalance reflects the fact that on some level you've already made up your mind, which is why you aren't noticing the pros and you are noticing all the cons. It's not a mathematical process, in other words, is what I'm trying to say. But if we do the cons first, the first one is the most obvious, which is that it takes up time. And a lot of you, time is in very short supply. I say that it takes up time, even though the way I myself do BookTube takes up the least time of any way to do BookTube. I do not edit my videos. I do not script my videos. I add no panels or images or anything. I don't do anything but turn on the camera and talk, then turn off the camera and upload the result. I don't do anything but that. And even that takes time. Now, again, I'm an odd case because in addition to doing the least common denominator in terms of time consuming, I also make lots of videos in a day. So not everybody does that. If you were a normal person and didn't make 3 or 4 videos a day, say you make 2 videos a week, and you do them the way I do, and you're not as cussedly long-winded as I am, if that's true, then what you are talking about there is, 15 minutes to make the video, which is just literally as long as it takes you to talk through whatever subject's on your mind, and then maybe another 15 minutes for uploading it, putting any kind of contact information on it, any links to anything else you're referring to, giving it a title, and putting it on YouTube. The very bare minimum of that would probably be 10 or 15 minutes to make the video, 10 or 15 minutes to post it. So, if you make 2 videos a week, that's an hour out of your week. That's not much. But most people don't do that. Most people who go to BookTube will add something. There is some sort of editing process involved. For instance, if you want to do vlogs, those of you who are coming to this video, in years in the future, or who are new to the BookTube ecosystem, the YouTube ecosystem, a vlog is where you film a little bit on Monday, a little bit on Tuesday, a little bit on Wednesday, a little bit on Thursday, as a way to walk people through your week with you. It's really enchanting viewing. But it obviously requires you to stitch those things together in an editing program at the end. If you're doing something like that, if you're doing something that's extremely info or graphic heavy, something that's very elaborate, there are plenty of booktubers who do that. That also is going to require a lot more time. You're going to be spending a lot of time in editing your video. The shooting will be the least part of it. That can be time consuming. I have heard from many, many booktubers that that's the thing they hate the most, and the thing that the most inclines them to make this con really important. Uh, Another con number 2, would be that BookTube encourages envy, which is a corrosive feeling. It's a bad feeling. Regardless of what you do with it, regardless of how susceptible you are to it, feeling envy is a poison. It's a terrible, terrible feeling, even in a low-grade thing, even in a fun way, right? The kind of envy that BookTube usually engenders is a fun kind of envy. You're watching someone's video, and they hold up a book, and you go, ooh, I want that. I want that. I envy that possession. I want that possession for my own. That's a low-grade kind of envy because it's all in fun, and because, thanks to sites like Amazon or eBay, you can instantly satisfy it. If you want to, you can instantly do that. But nevertheless, I'm just Catholic enough to say that anything that introduces envy, extra envy into your life, that is definitely a negative. That definitely counts as a con. That is not a pleasant thing to have in your personal makeup, even if it's just for a minute, even if you're laughing over it. And some of the envy that some people feel when it comes to BookTube isn't quite so innocent. Yes, sometimes you don't have the money to spend on that book. You still envy it. So it's corroding you. You know that it's out there, and you know that you want it. Maybe you never knew of it before, and now you do. Or the non-item envying. Some booktubers look at other booktubers and say, I envy their subscriber count, their view count, the Patreon, their nearby bookstores. Whatever it is, there are non-item related envies that BookTube can also introduce. I'm not saying that this is endemic to BookTube. YouTube does that just in general. Social media does that just in general. Social media, that's part of social media's business program, is to weaponize envy. But nevertheless, con number 2 would be that BookTube introduces envy. And con number 3 flows right from that, which is that BookTube encourages you to spend. It encourages you to spend money in order to cure your envy. And it's often done in the most innocent way imaginable. A BookTube channel, my own channel, would be a perfect example. Or you could be looking at my background right now and seeing a book you really want that you didn't know existed. You might ask me what it is. You might ask me to send it to you. That at least absolves envy. That at least unties the knot of envy. Or you might be looking for it online. And maybe you saw it, and maybe you have very little impulse control, and no amount is too much. But that kind of spending adds up. We joke about it all the time on BookTube, and I think it's worth joking about. It is kind of funny. We joke about it all the time how BookTube has been very bad for our book buying budgets. That's been as true for me as for anybody. You see, we're talking about books all day long, all week long to each other. Sometimes enthusing about those books. That's tough to resist. Really tough to resist. And that adds up. But if we get to my con number 4, con number 4 is connected with con number 2. It's connected with envy. But it's also just, it's not quite, envy is an action verb, right? To quote an old friend of mine. Envy makes you want to do something. You envy something and you want it. You want to act on envy. That's what makes it a poison, is that you don't keep it to yourself. Although it will eat away with you. It will eat away with you even if you do keep it to yourself. But con number 4 would be that BookTube also encourages you to care about silly things. Things that don't matter at all. View counts don't matter at all. Subscriber counts don't matter at all. They are things before you came into association with BookTube, you didn't know they existed. And now, when you are in connection with BookTube, BookTube will encourage you not only to know they exist, but to very much care about them. To very much care about them. So that you turn on the camera and you want to talk about, I don't even know, you read the memoirs of Nathan Bedford Forrest. And you thought some of it was interesting and some of it was revolting, and you wanted to give a little thumbnail of who he was, and then a little summary of how you felt about reading his book. And you're not doing that for the classroom. You're doing that for your BookTube friends. A conversation about Nathan Bedford Forrest. And then, a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, YouTube is subtly encouraging you to look at whether or not that conversation performed well. That is not a healthy way to look at conversing with friends, to look at whether or not it performs well. But YouTube will encourage you to do that. It'll encourage you to pay attention to things like subscriber counts. When obviously it's a number, and humans obsess about numbers. But a second's contemplation of something like subscriber count will show you how meaningless it is. How absolutely meaningless it is. If you have a subscriber count of 1,000 subscribers, and you make 2 videos a week, let's say, no more than 100 people will watch those videos. Unless one goes viral somehow, which is another thing that YouTube weaponizes you to care about, where you wouldn't care about it otherwise. Oh, strangers are talking about me. What healthy person thinks that and cares about it? But you can tell right away from that discrepancy that your subscriber count isn't your viewer count. Obviously, you only need to think about it for a minute to realize how many subscribers are bots. It's a huge percentage. If you have a big, healthy, active BookTube channel, I don't have a particularly big BookTube channel, but I have a healthy, active BookTube channel. I know that I have that bugaboo of all YouTube bugboos, a community. I know that I do. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, because we're all a lot of us are in contact outside of YouTube. I have mailed things to a lot of your addresses. You have mailed things to my address and been scolded for it. We've met at the Battle Bookshop. Plenty of people have come here to Hyde Cottage for wine and calzones. I know that there are people at the other end of this equation. And I love that. Absolutely love it. But that community isn't anywhere near as big as the actual statistical numbers associated with my channel. It's not anywhere close. It's a tenth. I would argue that is largely true with any BookTube channel or any YouTube channel. But nevertheless, even though you can take a step back and see that clearly, that your numbers-obsessed 10-digit monkey brain is immediately going to be looking at the numbers themselves. What are my numbers? Why isn't that number as big as so-and-so's? And that's a con, because that's not healthy. That's not healthy. That's not a healthy way to think. Caring about, much less obsessing on, silly, inconsequential details is not healthy. The only consequential thing about your BookTube video is, are you building a community? Unless you want your BookTube video to be a business. If you want your channel to be a business, and you want guys, fam, and you want merch, and your lawyers have been trained to shoot on sight any fan who approaches you in person, that sort of thing. If you just want the money, fine, okay, then obsess about those numbers. But I'm not really talking to those people. I'm talking to people who are doing this for the social part of social media, for the fun part of social media. And if that's the case, then that's the only important thing. And yet, YouTube encourages you to concentrate on other things than that. And then we get to the fifth con, which is in many ways, I think, the most important one of all. And the thing that, in my own experience, I made a fair number of videos, and I've been on BookTube for a fair number of years, closing in on a decade. And in that time, I have known lots and lots of BookTubers. I make no secret of why I'm on this platform. It is not to talk to other people about books. Unlike most people who come onto BookTube, I have a lot of people to talk about books with in my normal life. In my non-social media life, I have a lot of people to talk about books with, all kinds of books at all levels. I make no secret of the fact that I'm on here for that community. I'm on here to make friends, make acquaintances, fill an inbox with my email, Phil Voxer. A little bit ironic that most other BookTube channels don't want anything to do with me, but it doesn't ultimately matter. I didn't say that my ultimate goal here was to make friends with other BookTubers. No, it's to make friends with other readers. And I am continuing to do that. And that is absolutely real. But nevertheless, in that time, I've talked to a lot of BookTubers who aren't BookTubers anymore. A lot of them. Who tried it just a little or tried it a lot and then left. And in almost all cases, I think it might be unanimous, it might be 100%, in almost all cases, the reason why they left was the fifth con, which is that BookTube, takes a private, personal hobby and makes it public. Now, in some cases, in my case, for instance, that's a pure joy. I am I am an extreme extrovert. I was raised by people who think that sniffing each other's crotches in public is a perfectly acceptable way to say hello. So I love that. Absolutely love it. The more the merrier. The only thing I don't like about that public aspect of what YouTube does to reading is that I find that my own kind of reading doesn't always translate. Hence the, let's just put it mildly, ambivalent reaction that I get from lots of other booktubers, other people who make videos. My own approach to reading is fun. It's fun. It's sharp elbows. I am perfectly willing to call you an unbelievable, woolly, irredeemable loser if you so much as like a book that I don't like, because I know that it's not rocket science. We're not dealing with heart surgery here. We can have lots of fun disagreeing with each other. Believe you me. The long late night conversations that I've had with booktubers over the years in person have not been just handing bouquets of flowers back and forth. There have been lots of fun disagreements. That's how I think about books and reading. It's a natural attitude to have when you are an adversarial critic. And some people don't like that. Some booktubers, quite a few booktubers, don't like that. They want it to be one huggy snuggy group where everyone's in complete agreement about everything, not just books, but everything. I don't agree with that. I find that very boring. But fortunately, I have found hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who aren't booktubers who do share that attitude, that we can have all the fun in the world. I even love it when I see it elsewhere. Like I did recently a live stream with Chatting with Nuts, with Jimmy Nuts. And I mentioned in that live stream my usual shtick about how the people who claim they love Cormac McCarthy, the novels of Cormac McCarthy, are moving the goalposts. I can demonstrate that. I can demonstrate that the way you like Cormac McCarthy novels is different from the way you yourself say you like other things. You are changing your criteria in order to love those books, in order to give them a pass. And one person, my attitude towards Cormac McCarthy and Stoner and a whole bunch of other things ruffled a lot of feathers. Not Jimmy's, thankfully, but it ruffled a lot of feathers in the people who were watching that video, and more importantly, the dozen or so booktubers who very studiously did not watch that video because they knew that's what they'd encounter and they don't want to encounter it, which to me seems very parochial. But one person in the comments perfectly, I don't think they meant it, I think they meant it as an attack on me, but whether they meant it that way or not, it perfectly captured the way I look at this, because they said, well, thanks to your comments, I'm going to go buy a copy of Stoner. I'll move the goalposts if I damn well please. I read that comment and hooted out loud. That is exactly right. Not that you should disagree with me. You actually shouldn't. But it's all done in that way. It's all done in that rough and tumble way. I love that. I love the way BookTube takes that private, introspective hobby and makes it public. There are plenty of people who don't. And they're not wrong to not like that. There are plenty of people who try this. Maybe they make a video, maybe they make 10 videos, maybe they make 200 videos, maybe they get 1,000 subscribers, 2,000 subscribers. And then they realize, no, something very important has gone out of my reading world when this performative aspect entered in. Even though I'm not lying about any of it, it still feels wrong. It feels like I have given away something of my own inner world that I didn't have to give away and that I can take back. In other words, I don't see this as a con, but I recognize it not only as a con of BookTube, because that inevitably happens. There is no way to Olive, at a Book Olive, says that those of us who make BookTube videos, and also she's broadened that category to include those of us like herself and me, who are also published book critics. She has used before the term reading in public, a public reader. I like that. That's absolutely true. I have been a public reader for half a century, and I love it. But some people try that. When you make a BookTube channel, you become a public reader. And some people try that. They realize there's no way to partition, to compartmentalize that, and they end up saying, no, I don't like this. No, I want reading back. I've heard that from so many people who stopped making BookTube videos. They said, I want reading back. And they get it back. Bless them. I do stay in touch with them, so I know that it's true. It wasn't a mistake on their part. I definitely think it counts as a con, and maybe the most serious con of all, even though it's not a con for me. And then we'll move on to the pros. And again, we're not talking numerically. We have 5 cons. It's worth noticing whether or not the list of pros is much longer or much shorter, but it won't be a question of numbers with any pro and con list that you make. It won't be a question of numbers. Like, for instance, obviously, a lot of the people I know who have had BookTube channels and no longer have them, or who've scaled them back so far they might as well not have them, might nod at a lot of the items on that con list, but the only one that matters is the fifth one. They don't like they don't like having made a private hobby into a public function. They don't like that. They want to change that. So it's not a question of just numbers, because some of the pros and cons can weigh more heavily than each other. But if we talk about pros, I want to flip around the final con, because it's absolutely true, and it's in the BookTube newbie tag of almost everyone who makes a BookTube channel, which is that BookTube does take a private and sometimes a lonely hobby and make it public in a good way. That can also function as a pro. How many people, whether they have BookTube channels or are BookTube commenters, how many people have said, before this community, before this thing that is called BookTube, I had no one in my life to talk with about books. No one. That's a lot of people. Not just booktubers, but commenters as well. And suddenly you do have that. And it's not just an impersonal discussion board at Goodreads or Amazon. It's people. It's people that you're listening to them talk every day. You're getting to know them. In my case, you are getting to know them. Not parasocially. You can email me at any time. You're welcome to come over for wine and calzones or to meet at the Bravo. Suddenly, there are people involved here. I'm not the only one, of course. There are lots of other genuinely friendly booktubers. Suddenly, that private and maybe lonely part of your life isn't private or lonely anymore. That definitely can count as a pro, right? Pro number 2 is also connected with the envy and the buying thing. It's also connected with cons. And that is that BookTube provides you with endless recommendations for books in what is now endless variety. When I first looked at BookTube, when some of you, your fellow old-timers, plenty of people watching this video didn't know BookTube existed before the COVID pandemic. That was a jumping-on point for lots and lots of people. But plenty of people remember the good old days or the bad old days, depending on how you look at it. Once upon a time, 2014, 2015, 2016, BookTube didn't offer an endless variety of recommendations, to put it mildly. It mostly offered the same 8 hot books, and most of them were written for children. So there wasn't an infinite variety. Now, though, well, this channel you can get recommendations on almost anything, but there are all kinds of other channels as well. People have tried, they have tried this and found that they like it just enough to keep doing it. You have experts on all kinds of things, passionate amateurs on all kinds of things. What wasn't true a decade ago is definitely true now, that no matter what subject you're interested in, you'll almost certainly be able to find a booktuber who is knowledgeable on that subject and making videos about it. So that definitely counts as a pro. And a third pro, a little bit more nebulous and connected to those first two, is that BookTube provides endless book chatter. And yes, that will provide you with recommendations, and yes, that will provide you with envy, or maybe excite some envy. But it will also give you different viewpoints. It's not just a comment on Goodreads, it's a person. And maybe their cat is walking across the view, or their kid is wandering into the room. You can't help but feel that you're getting to know them personally. And a lot of those people will have different reading viewpoints than you. Now, if you are one of those huggly-snuggly readers or / booktubers who don't want any other worldviews, I want there's only one correct moral way to think, and I, by chance, have that moral way. I am, in fact, morally perfect. And the only people I want to have anything to do with are the people who are also morally perfect. The slightest note of discord means that person is, say it with me now, literally worse than Hitler. So I don't want anything to do with them at all. I've created a snuggly-wuggly world, and I don't want any notes of discord in that world. They will be expelled the minute they're heard. There are people who are like that. There are even booktubers who are like that. But most people aren't like that. Most people are perfectly happy to have their viewpoints challenged, or to see that a viewpoint can be different from their own and still valid for someone else. And that is definitely a third pro, because you can't help but get that on BookTube. It happens to me all the time. all the time. I remember most vividly with Noah's channel, Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse. A genuine, energetic reader who's, I don't know, top 10 favorite writers are people that I can't stand. Which was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. There was absolutely no way for me to dismiss Noah. There was no way for me to say, well, you're reading this, but you're not really understanding it. You don't have to listen to him talk about the books that he's read to know that he does understand them, that he gets them. Not just understands what's on the page, but gets them. Most of the time, his championing of those books did not move me at all. I was still thrilled to hear it. And every once in a while, they did. And that happens still. That happens all the time with other booktubers. No matter who it is, and no matter what kind of book it is. Where else in the book world, in my world of print journalism and newspapers and magazines and whatnot, of deadline prose news, book writing, where in that world would anyone have written anything that would have made me go back to misread? No one would have been able to do that. No one would have been able to do that. It wouldn't have worked. Gina Stanier did it with her videos. Because I'm watching her videos, you get the sense that you know the person, and then suddenly you realize, hey, well, this person really loves this author, and you wrote them off 40 years ago, but suddenly you don't feel comfortable with that anymore. How often have you had that happen on BookTube? That definitely counts as a pro. How many of you have found yourself warming up to the whole genre of romance because of Sarah at the Bookish Knitter? How many of you have had your disinclination or maybe intimidation about nonfiction chipped away at by Olive at a Book Olive over the years? Plenty. That is a real thing. And that moves me to pro number 4, which is that you are exposed to those viewpoints, and pro number 4 is that you are encouraged to change your viewpoints. You are encouraged by those factors to say, well, okay, this person isn't just saying that they love X, Y, or Z. They're also telling me why. They're telling me what to look for. How many passionate cries of the heart do we encounter on BookTube in a given week? It's actually a joy. It's actually an absolute joy. And it exists nowhere else. There's nothing like this on Goodreads or Amazon because there's no the human voices aren't there. And there's precious little like it in real life. You might go to a lecture or a lecture series, but you kind of have to be interested in the subject ahead of time. You don't know the professor from Adam. BookTube, though, it's people. You've let these people talk to you day in and day out, and then suddenly they're not trying to brainwash you. They're not trying to leverage that into anything, but suddenly those people are telling you, hey, I really like this thing, and I really like it for this reason. That will work in a way that nothing else does. That will work to make you freshen your reading view of something, some author, some book, some series of books. That, I don't know if I'm putting it correctly, but that is an unbelievable benefit. That's an unbelievable pro that I don't know of anywhere else. Even book clubs have to decide on a book ahead of time, but not BookTube. You don't know what you're going to be exposed to, and you don't know whether or not you're going to like it. It will depend in large part on the connections that you have made, the parasocial connections that you have made with the person making the videos, which is totally unpredictable and totally convincing. And then pro number 5 is a little bit of a sliver of a thing, but it's definitely real. And it's one of the big realizations that I had about BookTube that I didn't realize before I tried it, which is that BookTube can help you make real friends. And that doesn't necessarily just mean people who come over to Hyde Cottage for wine and calzones. Of course, I want that to happen. And I want a lot of people who have been here and haven't been here in a while to come back. It'd be nice if some of the people who haven't been here in a while would come back. Auntie Steve never hears from you. You never call. You never write. Of course, if you come to Hyde Cottage for wine and calzones, that is the nightmare scenario you are signing yourself up for, is that you are never going to hear the end of me wanting you to come back. But I'm not talking just about that. The thing I realized was true by doing BookTube that I didn't realize before is that online friendships are real. I don't know why I ever let anybody convince me otherwise. But they did, nevertheless. And you will still hear people just dismissively say, yeah, they're not real friends. Yeah, they're online friends. That's why the bigger YouTube channels, and alas, the bigger BookTube channels, say that they know under no circumstances will I even look at my comments field. I know who my friends are already. I'm not even going to look at my comments field. Don't feed the trolls. Anyone who comments is a troll. Anyone who watches me is a troll. They're vermin, as one British booktuber put it, when he didn't think he was being observed. They're vermin. They're good to pay my bills. They're good to get a house bought from me and my mum. But I don't want anything to do with them. They're trolls. They're scum. I'm willing to take their money, but I don't want any connection with them. But that isn't the rule. That's the exception. Opportunistic, scamming, grifter psychos like that are fortunately the exception, especially in the 300 or 400 channels that make up our little corner of BookTube. Those people are the exception, not the rule. Most people here are friends. People that I email with are friends. I'm not talking just about the ones who send me their old tech, although you should if you haven't. I'm talking about the people. There are plenty of people who send me tech or who send me Christmas cards or whatnot. But and most of those people I haven't met. Most of those people have not been to Hyde Cottage. I don't know anything about their personal lives except what they've told me. Sometimes that's a lot. Sometimes it's very little. But I know one thing for sure, and I know I'm not wrong about this, which is that the hundreds and hundreds, maybe by this point thousands of people who have emailed me, a lot of those people who send me Christmas cards or who send me in the email, they'll send me a picture of something cute their dog just did. Those people would send me money if I needed it. And if that's not friends, I don't know what is. Those people would come to my house with a van if I needed their help. Just look at what happened with Sean Stanfest. Recently told he had to move. No small thing for a person with as many books as he has and as many health problems as he has. He was swamped with help. Real world help from these supposedly non-real internet friends. That distinction, it wasn't until I did BookTube that I realized how hollow that distinction is. The people who are wishing me well, the people who are joshing with me and joking with me and poking fun at me and sending me cat memes in my email or on my other social media, they're real. And I'm real to them. We don't test that because, thankfully, tragedies don't happen every day. But I know what would happen if it did. So that's real. That's no small thing. That is a big pro, is that you can make actual real friends, even if you never meet them. How many booktubers have you heard who say, this person, these 5 people, I've never met them, but I consider them real friends? That's not just hyperbole. That's absolutely true. And then there's the final pro here, is that BookTube is fun. It's enormously fun. You have a whole bunch of people joking and teasing and playing with each other, making fake response videos, making real videos, giving each other nicknames, poking fun at each other in all kinds of ways. Now, I admit for this pro, that's mostly true of booktubers, not commenters. But the commenters get in on the fun too, a lot. No commentator gets in on the fun unscathed when it comes to me, because I don't think there should be any people who just make comments and don't make videos. It's the easiest thing in the world to make videos. You should, if you are in any way on the fence, you should weigh these pros and cons, which are not numerical, and some of them have a great deal of weight. It could very well be that you would love doing BookTube instead of just watching it. But for this pro, I'm mainly thinking of the people who make videos, which is a lot of people. A lot of people who make videos watch my videos. And despite what I said about my channel being largely disliked by other booktubers, it's fairly well embraced by viewers, but it's largely disliked by other booktubers. Despite that, there are quite a few booktubers who have nevertheless fallen into my clutches and they are very much a part of what I'm talking about here, which is that BookTube is fun. You're adding an actively, energetically fun element to your life. And those aren't in exactly heavy supply in life. So if that's out there, that might count as a serious pro. I would say the 2 most serious pros here would be number 1 and number 6. Number 1 is that if you are feeling alone in the world because you read, because you're not surrounded by people who read, well, BookTube is a way to fix that. It will unambiguously fix that. And number 6 is that it's a lot of fun. It's not like a lot of other YouTube communities. I have heard this from so many people over the years, people who migrated to BookTube from other communities. And almost always, in some cases no, but almost always say, oh my God, I barely even recognize this as a YouTube community. It is so completely different. It's completely genuine, and you're all having fun with each other. No one's competing with each other. No one's out for blood. No one's jockeying for that in-demand collab or anything like that. When people email me along those lines, I hasten to inform them that all of that stuff they're describing is true for BookTube, but only for the upper echelons of BookTube, the big BookTube channels. They are every bit as poisonous and fake and backstabbing as the rest of YouTube, but there's a huge substrata in BookTube that isn't. And that is wonderful. That is incredibly refreshing. I wouldn't know directly because I've never been part of any other YouTube community, but I have watched a lot of them, and there's a totally different feeling. In most BookTube videos, there's a totally different feeling. So as you can see from that list, there's one more pro than there is con. Again, this is not numerical, because a lot of these things aren't numerical type things. Some of them are pragmatic. BookTube will cost you money. It will cost you time. But most of them are amorphous. Most of them they'll have different weight depending on different people. I think I've covered the pros and cons of BookTube. So what you have to do if you've got a BookTube channel and you're wondering about continuing it, or if you watch a lot of BookTube and you're wondering about starting one, for instance, maybe you're thinking about starting a new channel in the new year. I'm filming this in November. Maybe you're thinking 2024 will be the year when I do this. I think this is a pretty good list of pros and cons. Where do they rank for you? Which one really jumps out for you? It'd be up to you to decide. I just thought I'd make this list to help clarify things if I did that. But I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.